Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. You know, just for my own personal enjoyment, I have recut the trailer for Avengers Endgame, changed the music and everything, and I think it's better than any of the trailers they originally released. I love it. I absolutely love it. Obviously, I can't post it up anywhere on YouTube because of copyright problems, but I enjoy it. I promise I actually did it. I feel like some of you guys, this is like the Comics Explained trailer version of like tribute, you know, like it's the best, it's not the best song in the world, it's just a tribute to the best song in the world, which I played. You have to believe me, like, but I actually did it. Maybe I'll post it on Vimeo or something like that. Let me know down in the comment section if you guys want to see it. But we're picking up with Future State. This is what's kind of cool about this. By the way, in the last video, the one that I did about the next Batman, I kept saying Luke Fox. For some reason, I kept thinking whenever I read about it online that they said Luke Fox was going to be the new Batman. Apparently, it's his brother Tim Fox, a newly introduced character. So thank you guys for that correction. I know you guys don't shy away from being like, actually, Rob, you're incorrect. The correct thing is Tim Fox. Like, I know you guys are huge on making sure that that I have factual information because I'm only human. I mess up, but thank you. You know, thank you for that correction. So I will get it right going forward. I'm not really sure if it picks up before. I assume it picks up before the events of what's going on with Tim Fox in Batman, and it would be cool if it did. That it was kind of like the events leading up to Batman comics, or maybe it takes place at the same time. We're not really given a definitive answer here, but if they do take place at the same time, it's kind of awesome. But what this does here is it initially picks up in the city of Gotham, and that Gotham, as is kind of described here, is like a city that's basically dying. Now, it's not as though Gotham's dying in a literal sense, like the economy tanked, everybody's moving out. It's not like it became Detroit, right? That's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is Gotham as it was known basically dying off. So the city where it essentially people basically had some measure of freedom, different things like that. And the reason why is because it's kind of given to us as very much the sort of totalitarian city that's ruled with an iron fist. Now, the person giving us this perspective is Bruce Wayne himself, and it kind of bounces back and forth a smidge in the sense that you've got Bruce Wayne, who more or less seems to be a cast-off in the city of Gotham, and the reason why is because he was shot in a dark alley somewhere, right? And seemingly the reason why he was shot in a dark alley is that at some point along the line, as we'd covered in the Batman comics, assuming the two go hand in hand, that once you started seeing the rise of these kind of totalitarian police led by what was essentially the magistrate or the ruler of Gotham, that Bruce Wayne has kind of been on the fly. Now, we know that individuals, just from the Batman comic, we know the individuals who wear masks are basically outlawed, right? Anybody who wears a mask is considered to be an outlaw in the city of Gotham. And so we can largely assume that as soon as this was passed, Batman was public enemy number one. And even insofar as the Batman comic itself with Tim Fox, he refers to himself as public enemy number one, right? So we can largely assume that the exact same thing happened to Bruce Wayne here when it all kicked off. But the important point here is it looks like one of these guys are the ones who shot Bruce Wayne. And so kind of focusing on the moment now, he's just essentially kind of making his way around the city of Gotham without trying not to get caught, and he's completely and totally broke, right? He doesn't have anything. One, because of the fact that Bruce Wayne is believed to have been dead, right? So how can a dead man use a bank account? Doesn't really work that way. I mean, I guess you could, but for the intentions of this video or this comic, he can't. And he's not like an average Joe out there, right? Somebody whose identity was stolen, right? He stole the identity of a dead man and he's kind of been walking around ever since. It's Bruce Wayne, right? It's like they said in Batman Begins. He's the Prince of Gotham. You'd have to drive 2,000 miles to find someone who doesn't know his name, right? So, I mean, because of that, he can't just walk around and pretend to be alive, right? So he has basically nothing on him whatsoever. More so than that, he's actually kind of having this bit of a conversation. It's kind of one-sided, but a bit of a conversation with a girl at this restaurant that he's eating at, right? This place, spending what little money he has left, if any money at all. And she's kind of talking about the nature of these things, right? That Batman's gone, that Batman's basically out of commission, right? Bruce Wayne's dead, that both of them are believed to have been dead, right? Because people don't know that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same person. So Batman's dead, Bruce Wayne's dead. And she kind of makes this interesting observation here where she says, it's kind of crazy. Like maybe Bruce Wayne offed himself because he lost all of his money, or maybe it could be drugs, right? But surely somebody like Bruce Wayne could find a way to get his hands on drugs. And I know it seems kind of throwaway and it doesn't really seem relevant, but this kind of gives us a good depiction of how the people of Gotham see Bruce Wayne. That in reality, despite all the things that the Wayne Foundation has done, the measurement, or the litmus test by which we as people determine determine whether or not our lives are getting better is usually by how much money we have in our wallet, right? That's usually what we do. That's how we as people function. Do I have more money in my wallet now than I did yesterday? Yesterday being a metaphor for like the year before or 4 years before or something like that. I mean, that's how Reagan beat Jimmy Carter. He asked the American people, is your life better than it was 4 years ago, right? It's that kind of situation. And so as long as we are financially better off, as long as we're able to pay our bills and our life feels like it's better, then for the most part, things are okay. The world could be burning down around us, but as long as we feel like things are getting better, then that's all that matters, right? That's the price you pay for a society governed by its feelings. But the important thing here is that people view Bruce Wayne as kind of this perception of this guy out there in Gotham somewhere, this super rich guy, the cream of the crop, the very, very top. And what does he really care about the average Joe, right? What does he really care about the average person? I mean, sure, he's done some philanthropy, different things like that. But if you're a person barely making ends meet and you're not seeing your paycheck getting any bigger, or you're not seeing your rent get any cheaper, then the question is, what does Bruce Wayne do for you, right? That's the kind of situation you run into. People kind of looking at their lives in a microcosm and not really looking at the bigger picture, which admittedly is kind of difficult to do when you're struggling, but at the end of the day, of what use is a society whose individuals cannot see themselves as part of a greater whole, right? At that point, that society is just doomed to failure. And so in the aftermath of Bruce Wayne being shot, he of course ends up taking residence at a kind of a backdoor surgeon, right? And it's just kind of like, I can pay, right? I can pay. And the reality is that this is the last of the money that he has, right? So seemingly before he got to this restaurant, he has no money whatsoever, right? The last money he spent, the last few dollars in his pocket were to have surgery done in order to get himself better, in order to heal himself to a degree, so he can recover, because there's nowhere for him to go, right? All of his money's been taken. We don't really know how he got to this point. We don't really know how he got to this place from, Bruce Wayne as Batman and operating in the city of Gotham and doing its thing to this point right now. It could be that DC may very well wrap back around to the events of Batman comics that are not part of Future State, where you have like Ghostmaker and all that kind of stuff. And the actions of Batman and Ghostmaker working together lead to this. We don't really know, right? I mean, it's one of these things where this is just a potential future that exists in DC coming out of the events of Death Metal, right? So who knows if this will actually be in continuity or not. But more so than that, you basically end up having Peacemaker number 1, right? Kind of the head of this totalitarian police force, essentially. And it's one of the things where they basically talk about this idea of splitting the difference, right? They basically say, okay, what we have here on one side is we have vigilantes. On the other side, we have criminals. And what's the difference between Batman and a criminal? Well, Batman hands criminals over to the cops, but it's one of these things where it's kind of like, at the end of the day, more often than not, we can't really tell the difference. Now, make no mistake here, this is not making an argument like the one that I make. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, right? If Batman really wants to make Gotham safer, you take inventory of the villains who just refuse to or cannot be redeemed, you kill them off, and everybody else, you just toss them to the cops. This is one of those things where this is vying for power, and this is usually how you see this kind of thing unfold. Now, again, we don't know the nuance of this, but we could go so far as to say that a lot of it really seems to be some kind of an underground movement or something along those lines, something akin to like the TV show Jericho from 2006 or like The Handmaid's Tale. If you guys never saw those, they're amazing, right? They're absolutely amazing. It's one of these things where to a degree, the people of Gotham kind of seem to be on board with this. Not in the sense of like, I mean, they're a little weary, like, what could this lead to, right? But it's one of these things where by the time you realize something's wrong, it's too late for you to stop it, right? And that's sort of what's going on here to a degree. This magistrate and these peacemakers have basically taken control of Gotham, right? They have the whole thing under their control. Now, we're not really given this depiction that life is terrible for people in Gotham, and that's usually how dictatorships, people like that, maintain control. They keep life good for the people who are there, right? I mean, you would be far less apt to support a dictatorship that had you living in concentration camps, and if in comparison to a dictatorship that had you living like a better life than you are right now. I mean, sure, some of your freedoms would be taken away, but at the end of the day, you would probably find a way to make those concessions. You probably find a way to accept that. And we know that because we've seen that happen throughout the world time and time again. Never happened here in the States, but it probably will. Like, I mean, you'd have to be some kind of fool to believe that the US will not experience some sort of authoritarian or dictatorship in like the next 50 years, right? You'd have to be a fool to believe that wouldn't happen. But Gotham, as it's shown here, is far more advanced than it was, right? So it's kind of intriguing because Bruce Wayne's not that old. And so it's kind of like, okay, I mean, right? It's not like, Batman Beyond where Bruce Wayne's like 70 or 80 years old or something like that. He's all grizzled. It's not like that, right? I mean, he was a lovable dick. Like, we loved Bruce Wayne in Batman Beyond. He was amazing. Just this crotchety old man who was just mean. You know, it was funny, right? It was funny. But like, he's still relatively young here, right? So again, this is one of those things, a future possibility, you know, so it probably doesn't come out of the existing Batman comics that are not part of Future State with, like, you know, Ghostmaker and all that kind of stuff. And somewhere along the line, you know, it seems, and at least from what we're told, somewhere along the line, Batman or Bruce Wayne seemed to get in bed with what was effectively this magistrate type character, right? Where he makes his way back into the city of Gotham. He's kind of walking around trying to stay hidden at the same time. That in the aftermath of what was believed to have been his death, that like there was this great big huge kind of mourning period and his face was all over these giant billboards and all that kind of stuff. But Gotham looks very much like what you would expect a futuristic New York State to look, right? So like a Neo Gotham, more or less. It's kind of how you would expect it to look, where it's like highly advanced, super, you know, all kinds of technology, different things like that. So it kind of makes you wonder exactly how things unfolded in this place. Again, it's a possible future, but not a guaranteed future. But if it is a future, that means that it's currently tied to the present. And the question you have to ask is, if Batman looks like he's at most 5 to 10 years older, then what kind of technological revolution did Gotham experience? Because hell's bells, that place looks totally different. It looks kind of nuts. But ultimately, it's one of these things where in the aftermath of the fact that he's more or less been outlawed, he lost everything, right? He's believed to have been dead. He kind of refers to himself as a ghost. And the idea here is, what does a ghost do, right? Well, a ghost haunts. And that's kind of the crazy thing. A ghost haunts, it lingers, it travels from place to place, and it basically terrifies people. And so in the end, despite having lost everything, he's actually a more dangerous Batman now than he was before, because the world believes he's dead, right? The world believes he's gone. And if the world doesn't know you're there, then you can effectively do pretty much anything you want to. And so, you know, instead of becoming like this extremely violent character or anything like that, it's kind of him going back to business as usual, right? He comes across a guy who's basically being mugged in an alley, and he basically steps in and stops these guys, right? Beats the crap out of these guys. But again, as we know, when it comes to this version of Gotham City, that any and all kind of fighting, violence, or any kind of crime or anything like that is immediately quelled by either the peacemakers themselves or by their own little drones or something like that. But Gotham's always under watch, right? It's always being viewed by the authoritarian figures here. And so as soon as this fight breaks out, right, within moments of this fight happening, suddenly it's stop all movement, right? These drones are right on the scene, right? They're right there. Now, of course, Bruce Wayne flees, right? He gets the heck out of there as best he can. But in that process, he basically ends up donning his Batman suit. And that's what's kind of crazy here, is because, you know, once he's kind of back being Batman himself, word is inevitably going to get around, right? Word's going to get around. I mean, he's told by order of the magistrate, you have to stop. And even when you have, you know, this Peacemaker number 1 watching all this go down, he's watching all these scenarios, right? Batman, you know, run from place to place, you know, fleeing from all these different things, and he's getting pictures of him and that kind of stuff. And when he zooms in, he realizes this is actually Batman, right? Batman's supposed to be dead, but this is actually Batman. Batman's basically back. And that's where things get a little wonky here, because it may be that DC Comics is at the moment taking the kind of new 52 Action Comics Superman-esque approach here, where you have Batman, you know, future state Batman that takes place in whatever this future is. And that DC Future State Detective Comics leads up to it. It kind of explains how we got to a point where, like, Tim Fox is Batman, right? Or they could be taking place at the same time. We don't really know, right? We don't have an answer here. We're one issue into each of them. We're gonna have to wait a little while. It's a really good story. I really like it. I'm gonna be honest. I like this better than I like Batman. It's really, really good. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.